All right, welcome back. KGM Home Inspections from Attic to Crawl. In this segment, we've a special guest back visiting us one more time, Alex Frenske, president of Chicago Southland Homes with Keller Williams. And what we're going to talk about today a little bit is there's always confusion between the home inspection, the appraiser, the FHA inspection, the HUD inspection, the VA inspection. There's so many inspections out there, the village inspection. And sometimes a buyer will have to go through the majority of those before they can purchase a house. It just kind of depends on the financing, whether they're going FHA, whether they're going VA, the village. There's so many requirements out there. But probably the home inspection, and from what I understand and from what I've seen, we probably carry the most depth inspection, and it does usually cover everything that FHA or VA is going to have. Unfortunately, it doesn't qualify to in place of a FHA or VA or sometimes village inspection. So, Alex is going to kind of help us decipher those type of inspections and kind of give us some ideas of what to expect. The other thing, Alex, I would ask you about too with the inspections is that, maybe we end with this, and what advice would you give to the seller to prepare for an inspection? Because so often we walk into a home and clearly it's not ready for an inspection. And it really makes our job very, very tough when we can't get to certain things. Certain things are obstructed, and we don't move personal items. We're not going to move furniture. We're not going to clean out closets. And if we can't provide a full inspection at that point in time, and if we have to come back, a lot of times there might be an associated fee with that nobody really wants to pay because the home wasn't prepared. But let's start with a lot of times I get calls for an appraisal, and there's several appraisers out there that we do business back and forth with, and they'll call me and say, hey, I just got a call for an inspection, as well. So maybe you can kind of highlight us a little bit on that.
Yeah, definitely, and there is a lot of confusion about it. I hopefully can boil it down here. So your home inspection as a buyer is something that's not required by anybody, although we always suggest it, and that's where you hire somebody like Kevin to come in and give you a report on everything that you should know about the home. It's optional, the cost is yours, and we always do suggest it. And as you mentioned, Kevin, it is going to be the most thorough of any of these that we're going to talk about. So that's your buyer's home inspection, and we generally refer to that as a home inspection. The appraisal, there is kind of an inspection-like element to it, which is why I think so that confusion is there. There's really two purposes of any appraisal that a lender orders. A lender is checking primarily to see what's the value of the home. Is it at least the amount that we're lending based on? That's the number one reason that the lender orders the appraisal. The other reason is they need to verify that the property is in decent enough condition. You can't get a mortgage on a home that's not livable.
Right.
So the differences come into play where you have different types of financing. You have conventional financing, you have FHA and VA. Conventional financing has the lowest restrictions on the property's condition. So if you have a broken window, or sometimes even something bigger, if the sink is missing or something like that, a lot of times that's okay for a conventional appraisal. FHA appraisal guidelines are tighter because generally the buyer's putting less money down. That means the FHA is taking more risk and they have a little higher bar for it. So that same cracked window, that's a problem.
Yeah, a lot of people, what they don't understand too, and what we explain to them, and we've had people say, well, I'm getting an FHA inspection, why should I get a home inspection? And the simplest way I can explain to it is FHA is coming in and doing an inspection to protect their loan.
Yes.
They're not there really to protect the buyer, where our role is to protect the buyer with the purchase.
Definitely, and you know what? I have been surprised at what comes up on an FHA appraisal report versus what doesn't, because I generally know what a lot of the common issues are, and it's just really surprising because sometimes I'll be telling everybody, okay, I'm expecting a laundry list because there's this problem, that problem, and nothing. The appraisal comes back, they didn't say anything about any of it, because it comes down to whether that appraiser decided to make a note of that and say that needed to be done. So no, as a buyer, you definitely cannot rely on that to protect you.
Right.
That's not the purpose.
And the appraisal will normally come in after the home inspection.
Yes.
Most of the time.
Yes.
As a rule.
Yeah. A lot of people will actually wait to order the appraisal until they've cleared the home inspection to make sure they're moving forward with the purchase,
Right.
which isn't a bad idea,
Right.
as long as the time is there. You also mentioned village inspections.
Yes.
So in a lot of municipalities, generally in the suburbs, the town or village that the home is in will require there to be a code inspection before the property is transferred or even leased. And that's usually the seller's responsibility unless the home's being sold as is. Sometimes the buyer has to order it. That again is not there to directly protect the buyer.
Right.
It's there for because that's the only opportunity the village has to really dig in on the house and make sure it meets code. It's not going to be as thorough as what you do,
Right.
And you know, in the end, it may depend on what side of the bed the inspector wakes up on. Honestly, you know, they're going to miss some things.
Yes.
and-
Yes, and with code, home inspectors, we don't get into quoting code.
Right.
It varies so much. There's so much it's grandfathered in. There's really no way we could define that. I mean, we know code. We sometimes will use it as a baseline to start. But you have to remember when the village goes in and they're doing a code inspection, they're looking at very, very, very specific things, and they're wanting to make sure that those meet minimum code. And minimum being the optimal word. I mean, would you want anything in your home being minimum, or would you want it on and above? So, and that's kind of where the home inspection comes in, where we'll make recommendations that's going to take it above a minimum requirement or a recommendation for any kind of repairs or upgrades, or regardless of what it is with that. But code, I've had some situations where somebody said, well, the code guy from the village came in and said it was okay. Well, what did he look at? Well, he looked at like 3 things. I said, okay. An average home inspector will look at approximately 6,000 items during the course of a 2 to 3 hour inspection on an average single family home, not 2 or 3 things. And we're normally there 2.5 to 3 hours.
The village also, depending on what's going on there, what they're realizing, this keeps popping up as a problem, they really do selectively enforce the code. So a lot of the villages adopt the same code, and it's hundreds or maybe thousands of pages long. They can't walk through a home and check all of that. So they have, this town, they're really big on driveways. So that driveway in the same condition might be noted on a code inspection in this town, and the same driveway wouldn't be noted in a different town. So you can't rely on that for consistency.
Right. So, and then to kind of finish off this segment, one of the things I touched upon was having a home ready for inspection. So often we'll go into a home that's been on the market, and you would think you would go in there and have access to, your service panel, your plumbing, your attic, and things of this nature. And so often they are just not ready for an inspection. And, that kind of goes back to the listing agent. Not always. I know the listing agents sometimes try their best, but a lot of times the sellers just, it's like, well, let them come in and look whatever they want. It is what it is. So what would be probably some of the, couple key points that sellers can do to prepare their home for an inspection?
Well, you're right. I mean, at that point, the seller might feel like they've done everything that's their responsibility. So, hey, buyer wants to check out the house, let them. Who cares? They might leave the laundry out, and right. And really,
among other things.
Yeah, true. It's in the seller's best interest to make that as quick as possible, because it's only going to frustrate the buyer if the inspector can't do their job and then has to come back. It delays the buyer's expectations about finding out how the home really is.
Right.
So I would suggest that they provide access to all areas: attic, crawl space, electric panel. Just do a quick walkthrough. Presentation matters.
Yes.
So if you just do a quick once over and make sure that the inspector can get everywhere, do their job in one shot, that'll make for a lot smoother transaction.
Excellent. Well, Alex, thank you again for coming back in and sharing this and,
My pleasure.
and talking about the different types of inspections. Again, KGM Home Inspections from attic to crawl. We're going to wrap up this segment. You get ready to buy or sell, you definitely want to get an agent. Keller Williams has some of the best agents out there, so you definitely want to go with them. And we'll see you on the next segment.